Indie Beacon Radio with hostess Rox Burkey. Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. You can send questions for each show on Twitter using the hashtag IndieBeacon. Now sit back and enjoy learning about our guest for this show.
Wow. Welcome to Indie Beacon Radio, where we get a chance to interview authors and talk to great people like Anne Louise O'Connell today. My name is Rox Burkey, and I will be your host. So welcome, Anne.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here, Rox.
I'm excited to talk to you because, you know, it's been a while since you and I have spoken, and I want to make sure that we kind of let our listeners know a little bit about your background. And the part I found really interesting was your publishing background. So kind of tell me a little bit about the publishing and how you got into it, and let's go from there.
Sure. It was pretty organic, really, how it all evolved. As most writers, I've been a writer since I can remember, way back in elementary school, writing out really deep poetry. And then for my professional career, most of my career, I was in public relations, so did lots of business writing. And did most of my PR in Florida. But let me think, what year was it? 2007, I moved to Dubai, and yeah, and started a working freelance. And fast forward, if you're talking about what inspired me to get into publishing, I started writing more long form while I was there. I had a book published in the UK about Dubai, and then I wrote my first novel, and I had queried some agents and then wound up studying, up on self-publishing, which was pretty in its really early phase back at that time.
Right.
But self-published a couple of novels, and then I'm the type of person that I like to teach what I learn. So I started teaching other people how to self-publish. And fast forward to 2016, I moved back to Canada after 4 years in Dubai and 4 years in Thailand. And just it evolved into a point where I had so many people I was coaching that I thought, well, I might as well start a publishing company. Just not sure why I was that brave, but so 2016 I started a publishing company.
I mean, that's really exciting. You've got the world travel, which means you have, oodles of contacts everywhere that you have made and built really good, strong relationships with, and then you educate or help or mentor or whatever words are appropriate these people. I mean, that's awesome. So the publishing company has kept you on kind of the small press side. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'm kind of a hybrid between self-publishing and traditional publishing.
Okay.
You might call me a small press, but the model that I use is a pay-to-publish model. So it's like self-publishing, but I carry the ball pretty much. It's authors who, don't want to go through the process of agenting or directly contacting a publishing company, really don't want to wait that 2-year time frame that it often takes, are really eager to get going, but they don't want to do all the nuts and bolts. They don't want to do the managing the editing process, the design process. They don't want to look at the distribution models and things like that. So that's where I come in. But I consider it a partner publishing model because the authors are involved every single step of the way. So,
and that's awesome. So do you help with what I find authors really struggle with, the marketing side? Do you help them overcome that?
That's a really good question. Of course, my background in PR for 17 years, it's something that I'm naturally drawn to helping people with. So in the lead up to the launch of a book, I do sort of the basic, press release, building the media lists, helping coordinate those kinds of things, helping them set up author profiles on, Author Central and Goodreads, those types of things. I'll interview them and coach them, in, how to do an interview, talk about a lot of the things that go with a launch, like in-person book signings and things like that. I do support ongoing. So part of the publishing contract does include some marketing pieces, and into the first, few months of the, after the book launch. As far as ongoing PR and marketing for the authors that I've published, it's more of a support role, but I also will incorporate, of course, the titles that I've published along with the PR and marketing that I would do for OC Publishing, predominantly on social media, but I also do some select advertising, in different publications and of course, Facebook marketing and things like that.
You mentioned book signings, which, I have to say, in this year of COVID, book signings are less than stellar.
Right.
At this point in time. So what thoughts and ideas have you used to overcome that? Because people are still writing.
Oh, of course, absolutely. And, in-person book signings are great ways of course, being face-to-face with your readers. But I have launched 2 books during COVID, which were the launch dates had been set, of course, a year or more ago. Both authors were eager to continue with the process, and of course had more time on their hands, being from home. Although one author is 87 years old, so she wasn't working anyway. But one actually did a Zoom launch in a venue that was sponsored by a local business group. Very, very small group there, spaced of course, but had, people that were joining in. A lot of authors are doing, things like giveaways, signed giveaways. So if you can't see me, in a live event for obvious reasons, then, join me on Zoom and, we'll have a little chat, a little Q&A. And, for those of you who are here, I will sign the book and mail it to you, kind of thing.
Oh, nice. Okay, so you're getting some success along that line. So the publishing side that you started a few years ago is what you consider to be your core strength right now?
Right now, it's what I'm focusing on because it really took off quite quickly, sort of snowballed. And I had this idea that I could do, 3 days a week with although when you're a small business owner, the days of the week don't really matter, but I figured I would do a few days a week with the publishing company and then still have a couple of days, solid days to do my own writing. And that just isn't happening. And and authors out there will also know that as you evolve as a writer or author, the type of methods you use start to become more clear. And I'm the type that has to be totally immersed. Like I can't do a couple hours here and a couple hours there. So I learned that about myself as I was working with other authors and publishing their books. And I have very little time to do my own writing, which is okay. I'm very excited about that, but I really do hope to kind of ease up a little bit. And, at this point, I have so many projects underway that my publishing calendar is scheduled out to 2021, the end of 2021.
Great.
So I'm not taking on any new projects, but as those sort of evolve, things will lighten up a bit for me, because then most of the time consuming part will be in the design in somebody else's hand. So I'm fingers crossed that I'll be able to do some more writing in the new year.
Well, very cool. And do you want to do more traveling? I've got to think that somebody's gone to Dubai, Thailand, Canada, and probably everywhere in between. Travel's a fun thing.
Yes, I love to travel. And my sister and I have promised each other that, well, and actually both my sisters, that we'll do Paris when this whole thing, goes away. And one of my books that I've got outlined and I'm working on is set in Paris. So who doesn't like to do research on the ground, right?
Especially on that ground. I'm all there for you. I'll be happy to be your gopher.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So we're going to take a short break here and hear from our sponsors. And when we come back, if you're okay with it, Anne, I really want to talk now about your writing, okay?
Sure.
Thank you.
Do you send book sales to a company that takes most of your money? Want to earn more money from your book sales? Do you want a bookstore that supports you? Introducing a new bookstore for indie authors and small press, B4R.store. Earn up to 80% of your book sales and learn how to market yourself. B4R.store. Join us for the 6th Annual Authors Marketing Event in Granbury, Texas on July 23rd to the 25th, 2021, where authors share ideas and learn from the professionals over a 2-day weekend. Receive your book marketing certification from the only organization in the world that has been doing it for 5 years, Authors Marketing Guild, a membership-based organization that supports authors from around the world. Learn more at ame.authorsmarketingguild.com. Sponsored by IndieLector.store, a bookstore that pays authors their fair share.
Hello, I am the author and poet Denise Bryson. I am the author of The Things That Cross My Mind, Love's Reality, both in book and audio form. I am also noted as one of the best poets of 2011. I have 2 new projects coming up. One is the Blinky series, where Blinky tells us all about our coins and our bills for our children. I also have a book coming out called Say Ye. It's quotes from Denise Bryson, just inspirational and that will help you along the way.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
So welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio, where I am so honored this evening to have Anne Louise O'Connell with me from Canada. And you know, in our first segment, we talked about the publishing, but I really want to talk about where you're trying to get back to and where you actually started, which was on the writing side. So let's start with what genres were you wanting to write in, Anne?
Well, I've found myself naturally drawn to writing cozy mystery. Mystery and suspense is one of my favorite genres to read. And so, you know, I always, when I work with authors and for myself, I always like to read more of what I want to be writing to see, you know, what direction I might go in. And the voice that seems to be coming out in my writing is sort of lighter fare, sort of amateur detective-y type stuff. Sort of a la Sue Grafton, you know, the alphabet mysteries with Kinsey Gilhone. So that's sort of more where I go rather than the heavy, you know, thriller kind of stuff.
Well, that's really fun. And so you mentioned that your next book is kind of set in Paris.
Well, it's probably, I have 2 or 3 books that are semi-outlined, and that's the one that probably has most content sort of developed. And my last book was set in Dubai and Saudi Arabia, and it was Deep Deceit.
Okay, look at that. Oh, that's beautiful. Okay.
Thank you. I know, isn't it gorgeous? Yeah. And after I wrote that book, one of my readers' feedback that I got was, wow, I really loved one of the central characters, and I think you might have a series here. And I'm like, really? So that idea took off. And so I would really probably, the next one will be the sequel to Deep Deceit. And then hopefully there'll be 2 or 3 after that, and they'll become the Susan Morris mysteries.
Okay, so Susan Morris is the central character of that book, is that
correct? Yes. And so prior to that, I had outlined this book called Paris at Last, where the central character was an older woman, sort of in her 70s. And everyone says that people don't read books with protagonists who are older, but I don't believe that. And, you know, as the world gets, as our you know, people get older, and you know I like to read all kinds of different ages, but so as I was outlining that, and I've been to Paris several times and have already picked out the street and the loft that this lady will be living in, but I think I'm going to turn it into a Susan Morris mystery.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought, you know what, because I love the storyline that's evolving with that, but I
Right.
also feel committed to, I've put out there and talked a lot about the, the sequel to Deceit, and everybody is waiting for it. So I figured I best just jump right in.
That's very exciting. So, since you have a lot of the content written for essentially book number 2, is what I'm going to label it. I could be wrong, but
Yeah.
so if you're starting on that now, do you see that being available in 2021? Do you think that that's a good goal?
I would love it to be, but I think more realistic is going to be early 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you go through the process yourself, now you've got the publishing background, are you going to be able to leverage things like beta readers and special editors and the same prescriptive approach that you provide for your customers?
Oh, absolutely. And I did the same with my novels even before I started my company. I'm a bit of a nitpicky professional. And because of my background in PR and writing website copy and press releases and corporate bios and like soup to nuts, and then, content, social media content and things like that. The whole, if I read a book, like finding typos just makes my skin crawl kind of thing. So even with my own books, I had beta readers and editors, and I take them through the same rigorous editing that a traditional publisher would. So I go from the developmental edit to the copy edit, and then even so it's probably 5 or 6 times that a fresh set of eyes go over it. And then after the layout and design is done, then there's another proofread that's done before it would be published. So yeah, I would do the exact same thing with my own books. Yeah. And I have sort of built a cadre of designers and editors that I would work with. Yeah.
Well, very good. So do you find that you have to use different editors for different genres?
Yes, as a matter of fact. And it's kind of, historical fiction is one of the genres that I publish. I don't write, although I love reading historical fiction as well. But I have an editor who I work with. I've published 2 historical fictions and hopefully more to come. And I have an editor that I work with who does specifically that for me. And for mystery and that type of a thing, for sure, I pick and choose the editors that have those backgrounds. And some, there's an editor I work with that has done multiple genres, so I would have no problem using her for my mysteries.
Well, very cool. So what do you think are the biggest barriers for authors to actually get the book out there? Now, you've got multiple books, but what do you think are some of the barriers that authors really need to push through or jump over or go under?
Well, I mean, there aren't many barriers right now to getting it out, other than the platforms that can be a bit, I don't want to say unwieldy necessarily, but they're not necessarily intuitive, shall we say. So, I use Ingram Spark. I did use CreateSpace, and then of course it was rolled into KDP, and they're easy to use, but take a bit of learning. There's quite a learning curve. So a barrier might be, and I've worked with authors before, and oftentimes the reason that they come to me is it becomes way too convoluted. And I mean, of course, the more you do it, the easier it becomes, like anything else. To learn a new program or process takes some time. So that could be a barrier, like the technology. You have to have, good bandwidth, for example, when you're loading files and things like that. And I think maybe the other thing you're getting at is the competitive nature of the marketplace. It's darn near impossible to break through. And So organizations like the Authors Marketing Guild are extremely important for authors. And I say to everybody, and even for myself, it never ends. Like publish a book, and I'm still, fortunately, if you write fiction, it's evergreen. So it's not like you're not riding a wave. I've published last year and earlier this year memoirs for other writers. Well, at the time, there wasn't this deluge of memoirs from really famous people. So now it's like, you're kind of buried in it. So I think the important thing is to look at unique channels, not just the bookstores, and like look at places that are relevant to your subject matter. With one of the memoirs, it's sort of was a Me Too, and I'm like, well, we need to start contacting women's studies programs and places that you're looking at not just one purchase, maybe it's a bulk purchase kind of thing.
Yeah, awesome. You're 100% right, and I think it's really changed having the alternate avenues like some of the online bookstores, especially the one that's supported by Alan, is just the way to go. So we are at, again, a point. We just go through this, Anne. So
Wow.
we're going to stop and listen to our sponsors, and then we'll be right back.
Authors Marketing Guild is a membership-owned organization designed to help authors succeed and learn how to better market and sell themselves and their books. Join us at authorsmarketingguild.com and receive so many benefits you'll wonder why you didn't join sooner. That's authorsmarketingguild.com.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. Don't forget to like us, follow us, or subscribe to one of our many channels. Now, here is your host for today's show.
Yes.
Welcome back to Indie Beacon Radio. I'm Rox Burkey, and I'm here with Anne Louise O'Connell, and we are just dashing through this. So, a couple of things I want to cover right away. And as I know, Bertie told me you have an award-winning book. So tell me about the award and when you got it. And the book. Do you have the book you can show?
I do. It's behind me, and it's also here. It was quite the surprise. I was very excited. This was my first novel. After I had a nonfiction book published called At Home in Dubai. That was traditionally published, and then I really loved the long form writing. At the time, was starting to go through the change. Long story short, one night I got up and started writing about what a night sweat felt like, because I was just drenched, and I laughed and I cried, and all of a sudden I thought, oh my goodness, this is crazy. So I created a character who was going through the change, and her name was Abby, and she was experiencing extreme menopause. She went out one night with a bunch of girlfriends. She woke up the next morning, couldn't remember anything, wound up on trial for murder. You'll have to find out how that went.
Wow, hold that cover up again.
Yeah. So this is it won an Independent Publisher Book Award, which is it's a magazine out of New York. And I went to New York and got my prize, and it was very exciting. And then I thought, wow, maybe I can actually do this. And so that's sort of what triggered writing Deep Deceit as well. So I had so many ideas going on in my head. I just had to get them out.
So at this point, how many books have you published, Anne?
Two novels, my own books, 2 novels, the At Home in Dubai and this anthology. It's just a collection of travel stories and expat stories.
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much it.
All right. So where can people find you when they want to learn more about Anne O'Connell?
Well, my website is www.ocpublishing.ca or .com. So if someone did .com, it would come back. I'm, of course, on social media, Twitter, OC Pub HFX. which is Halifax, which is the city that I'm in. Instagram is also OCPubHFX. And of course on Facebook, either OC Publishing, and both my books, my novels also have pages. So facebook.com/Deep Deceit or /menopause.thenovel.
Well, very cool. So I'm sure that you have a way that people can maybe email you and you respond to them, or do you blog for them? What's your focus?
I'm sorry, how to reach me by email?
Blog or email, or how do you?
Oh, sure. Email. You can send email to ann@ocpublishing.ca.
Nice. Nice. All right. So I know that you haven't had any book signings lately, but do you have places that you're planning to travel in 2021 where people can meet you, greet you, or any Facebook events that you want to alert people to?
Nothing planned right now. So stay tuned. And I always have on the homepage of my website, ocpublishing.com or .ca, always has news updates, and it'll be announced there. And I have a newsletter as well. So if anybody wants to sign up for my newsletter, they can do that from the homepage of my website. I do have a blog, but I'm trying to get that more active. It's writing just because, but probably better from my website. So.
Okay, and your newsletter, when people sign up for that, which all of you go out and sign up for that newsletter today, then you'll go ahead and alert them when you do have an event that you can actually get out to and see people and
yes,
talk to fans. That's such a biggie.
Oh, it's huge. And actually, if you sign up for my newsletter, you get a free download PDF of Mental Pause.
Oh, very cool. I love freebies. Free goes.
Me too.
Well, Ann, I have enjoyed every moment of our discussion, but we are headed toward the end of this discussion. We do it again when you go on and get ready to go to Paris, maybe, or something like that. Anne Louise O'Connell, you're wonderful. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Oh, wouldn't that be fun to do it from the Louvre or something?
I'll go as your grunt.
It's on the list.
That's it. Thank you, Anne. Have a great evening.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to Indie Beacon Radio, where creative souls can find help in marketing their creations. To learn more about Indie Beacon services, to be a guest on the show, or to advertise on our show, please visit our website.
Indie Beacon Radio with hostess Rox Burkey. Indie Beacon Radio is produced by B. Allen Bourgeois for Authors Marketing Guild LLC, copyright 2020. Voiceover by Randy James, Lydia Bello, and B. Allen Bourgeois. To be a sponsor of the show or for more information, please email us at info@authorsmarketingguild.com. To be interviewed for the show, please complete the form at radio.authorsmarketingguild.com. Music Always Rejoice by Ramcord of